Hello and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining our webinar today on the path to the golden record. My name is Kim Kaluba, and I'm going to be your housekeeper for this part of the event. Just to get you a little bit familiar with Bright Talk, if you'd like to ask a question, we are very happy to take those. Please put those in the question icon at the top right-hand vertical column. So please put your questions in there. We also have a set of polling questions. We'd love to get your feedback from the audience on a couple of questions there. So feel free to answer those as you are participating and listening to our event today. If you'd like to put any announcements or chat with your fellow participants, feel free to put that in the announcement icon, which is the statement up there with the exclamation point. And if you would like to learn a little bit more about the event, the I icon also will tell you a little bit more about this event, as well as some of the topics that we're going to be covering today. So that ends our housekeeping notes. I'm going to turn this over to Ann Maya so she can kick us off on our informative discussion today on the path to the golden record. Over to you, Ann.
Thanks, Kim, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our session. As Kim mentioned, we're going to be talking about the path to the golden record. I have with me today Ayush Parashar from Boomi, a co-founder and a senior director in engineering. We also have Ryan Hartley, who is a subject matter expert in master data management from Huron Consulting Group. My name is Ann Maya. I'm the head of product marketing at Boomi. So welcome, guys. And why don't we go ahead and do some quick intros before we get started. So I'm going to start with you, Ayush.
Hello all, thanks Ann. I'm Ayush Parashar. Most of my professional life I've been in data management space. At Boomi, I lead the product development of the data management applications of the iPaaS platform. I came into Boomi through acquisition of Unify Software, which was a data catalog and preparation provider, and I was one of the co-founders there. And before Unify, I was one of the founding engineers at Greenplum, an MPP database company that was eventually acquired by EMC. So that's about me. Over to you, Ryan.
Good morning, I'm Ryan Hartley. I'm an MDM solution expert at Huron Consulting Group. I've been working in master data management since 2006, working in areas of data strategy, data governance, and data management. Back over to you, Ann.
Okay, awesome, guys. We're talking about master data management and the path to golden record in the context of mergers and acquisitions. And I saw a recent stat from KPMG saying that global mergers and acquisitions, the activity in that space in 2021 surpassed pre-pandemic level matches or levels. And it's really kind of gearing up now, and it doesn't look like there's any signs of that stopping. And I have some experience working in organizations that have either been merged or we did an acquisition or we divested. And I know you guys have too. And actually, funnily enough, Boomi itself has gone through a myriad of these activities, and most recently been divested by Dell. And we have gone through a lot of restructuring and setting up our business, and it's a very exciting time for us. We're seeing massive growth in this time period. And so we're going to uncover, and we've experienced some of the things we'll be talking about here today. But let's just quickly, I know that you guys have had some experience too. So let me again start with Ayush. What's your experience with mergers and acquisitions personally?
Absolutely. So at Unify, and maybe starting with Unify, at Unify, we saw a lot of complementary capabilities in terms of like data discovery, cataloging, and preparation as compared to the leading iPaaS platform of Boomi. And these complementary capabilities, essentially, they help businesses leverage data into their digital integration journey and more data and creating better business outcomes, right? And that synergistic view actually led to the acquisition of Unify by Dell Boomi. At that time, Boomi was within Dell umbrella in January of 2020. And what we see is like M&As are actually like processes of creating synergies between different companies that are kind of being acquired and the one that's acquiring, and eventually it leads to alignment of business entities, and typical business entities are like employees or like definitely customers, product, right, and even processes and infrastructure, and you want like 1 + 1 to be greater than 2. That's the idea. And in my experience, we've achieved quite a lot for our customers in the use cases we have solved together, and that continues on. But if I have to think about like my learnings, like what I found is that if you are being data driven and information driven, that can help you navigate through the M&A process in as efficient way as you can, right? And then there are always unknowns in this process. I mean, again, going back to our scenario, like we were acquired in Jan within 2020. Within 2 months, there was COVID pandemic. Within a year, there was Boomi divestiture, and then we see this macroeconomic condition around inflation. And so certain things are very difficult to predict and unknown. But yeah, if you can be data and information driven, nothing better than that.
Yeah, very well said. And Ryan, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we went through our own merger and acquisition this year as my company got acquired into Huron Consulting and went through that same process. A lot of our challenges and a lot of merger and acquisition challenges is how do we move all of our customer data into one central location to understand kind of that white space of where can we cross-sell and where can we now sell into new customers. So a lot of what we look at for data cataloging and data prep is that, you know, how do we discover data quickly and how do we centralize that data into a future golden record and into a centralized location?
Yeah, excellent points. And I know that some of the things that we've seen from our customers as well is that, to the point that Ayush is making, they want to be more data driven, because the quicker that they can realize the value of an asset that they've acquired and combine those systems together, the quickly they can realize that value and extend it to their sales force as well. You know, I think that's really interesting. The other interesting stat I've seen is one that gets bandied around a lot, and that's one from Harvard Business Review saying somewhere between 70 and 90% of all M&A mergers actually fail. And so I know that it can be the problem, and one of the consequences of a failure could be penalties if the transition doesn't happen in time, and also loss of value, inability to really take advantage of the activity that was made, be it a divestiture or a merger. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Given your experience, I know Ryan, you've brought companies through this process very successfully. So one of the things I want to talk about is, what are the phases that organizations go through? And actually, just before we get started with that, I want to maybe level set. We're going to talk about a few terms throughout this next 45 minutes or so that I want to make sure people all understand the same definition. So if we could just start there, we said this is the path to the golden record. Golden record, Ryan, can you give us a simple layman's terms description of what do we refer to as golden record?
Yeah, so golden record is where we're taking data from multiple systems and looking for duplicates. And when we find duplicates and match them down, we want a Reader's Digest or a single well-defined version of that record by domain. If we talk about customers, it would be a customer record. So if we have two records that are Ryan Hartley and R Hartley and they match down, there's going to be survived golden record that will say Ryan Hartley on it. That is the most valued and trusted record of a collection of duplicate records.
Okay, thank you. And the other term that we hear an awful lot about, or we will be talking about, is a business glossary. Ayush, do you want to give us a quick definition of what that is?
Absolutely. And so business glossary is a list of actually business definitions and kind of concepts which are kind of explained very clearly and defined very well, right? And the idea is that you want everybody to be on the same page with respect to how they understand those critical and important topical concepts, and that kind of it helps in improved communication between people, right, of various business units and company in general. Now, typical examples of business glossary, I mean, let me start with simple. It's basically your calendar year and fiscal year, defining that really well, where the quarter is ending and things of that sort. And we have seen as simple as that thing can be very confusing when it comes to different meetings that are quarterly meetings and so forth. And a more complex example, like, assuming that if I'm an auto insurance company, can be like bodily injury liability insurance. Now, this is a very common term in auto insurance, but based on the company or geography, it can be very different definition. And so this is business glossary and very meaningful for organizations and people within company.
All right, thank you. And finally, metadata. Now, I know that throughout my time in IT, I've heard metadata used a number of times. When we talk about metadata in the context of master data management, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, specifically like in this conversation around golden records, metadata is something that actually information or knowledge around data. So it is at the end data about the data, but where it is meaningful is it gives you the context about the data. It helps you kind of search and discover data, and it helps you kind of classify data as well, right? And again, simple examples are basically who is the owner of a data, what is the creation date, when was that data last updated, and things of that sort. More complex kind of metadata is lineage, right, which is where the data is coming from and going to the trustworthiness of data or the quality scores of the data.
Awesome. Actually, that was the other term that I think we needed to find as well, lineage. So thank you for that. And going back to my original point of trying to avoid failure when we talk about mergers and acquisitions and getting the business so it can genuinely be data driven. Phase one. So starting off in a project when you are helping a customer through a merger, acquisition, or divestiture, what are the first steps that are really important to kick the project off to a successful start? Why don't we start with you, Ryan?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things I look at when we are starting off the process. One is we need to understand our current ecosystem before we go and acquire or find new companies to consume into the current company. We need to start crawling and profiling our current data, which means I'm going in and I'm looking at all my different systems from Salesforce to SAP to any old IBM systems, and we're going to catalog them by using data catalog and prep to evaluate what sits in each one of those systems. What is customer data? What is product data? What is finished goods? But two, we're getting to a point where we can start moving that data to a more centralized location and bringing it down into one place where I can now have more of an enterprise definition of what is a customer to me, what is the enterprise customer definition for a product or an item. And so that will allow us in the future, as we look at companies to be acquired, to give them our data dictionary and definitions of what a customer means and let them map into our systems.
All right, cool. Ayush, anything to add to that?
I mean, the only thing, a couple of points maybe. One is like data governance. So as you start with this journey, it generally starts with businesses and you're talking to HR people for employee records, you're talking to sales people for customer records, and you want to ensure that you're giving right access to right set of people. So you're masking the data, you're ensuring that geographical boundaries are not crossed. So if I'm supposed to see only US data, I'm only seeing US data. So governance is the pillar that also comes into play. And then the next one is metadata management and collaboration. So if you're creating this catalog with rich metadata and business glossary, it fosters real good collaboration between the set of people because they know the definition, they know what's going on, and there is less confusion per se. So those are the only two things to add.
Okay, awesome. So you're talking about discovering all that data. So know what you have, where it is, what you have all together. Then it's about understanding what type of data you have, so you know who the stakeholders are, who own it. And so you mentioned data governance. That will be not only knowing what to do with that PII or personal identifiable information, but masking it too. So making sure it's secure and you're giving access to the right person at the right time. So I think those things are all very important. Is there anything else that you think we need to consider, or prospects need to consider when they're first going through this process?
I mean, I definitely would talk about that or add on to the data governance piece, right? That is the most important piece of this. you're trying to agree on common data definitions for all your shared data. You're trying to get compliance put in place for all your data privacy laws and regulations. And at the end of the day, it helps you to eliminate a lot of your siloed data systems that are inconsistent, and it helps to improve your data quality by being able to understand all your different attributes and all your different systems. So that data governance and the data governance is a very strong piece of that first 30 days.
Okay, and what would you say are some common pitfalls? So, discovering that data sounds like a simple enough exercise, but I've worked in IT for about 20 years, and I know that I used to work with migrations from one operating system to another, and a lot of the problems that I found with large organizations or organizations who have gone through acquisitions, they don't know where their data is. Is that a common pitfall that you see, missing data sets altogether?
Yes, in my opinion, yes, that is going to be one of your biggest pitfalls. The other is if you try, I call it building the house. You're trying to build a house of data governance and data strategy and moving data to a central location, and it's only being done with one department of your organization, like marketing and not marketing and sales. We find a lot of pitfalls of getting the right enterprise definitions of what a customer means or what a supplier means, and we only get a one-way answer. And we really need to get to a point where we have the whole entire ecosystem inside of an organization's description of what a customer is, and defining who really owns that attribute and who's allowed to update that record. So we don't get a miscalculation on a domain of data, and we don't get a fighting back and forth of updating as the marketing department wants to nickname the customer, but the sales department has to send out invoices to their formal business names.
Okay, great stuff. So that's phase one, and then the middle phase, I'm going to call it the implementation phase. What are some critical steps at this phase? Now you've discovered the data, you've kind of got some stakeholder alignment, you've started, you created a data governance process. What are the next steps that you should go through?
So yeah, once you've kind of discovered and analyzed the data, it is the time to kind of converge the data into one place, into what we are calling the golden record. And for different business entities, again, it can be employees, customers, and so forth. So in this particular phase, application integration comes into play, which is like you are actually getting that data and moving into and stitching that data together as well, which can be part of systems like Master Data Hub. But a couple of things as part of that process are important, which you would have kind of discovered in your phase one, but you're kind of implementing in the phase two, which is one is data quality. It's like, okay, a customer can be General Electric in one system, can be GE in another system, and things of that sort, right? So you want to ensure that you are kind of taking care of those quality aspects as you are kind of moving the data into the MDM as such system, right? The second piece is business conformance or business rules. Now, for a company that is being acquired, they may have different sales region as compared to the acquiring company, and so as you kind of move the data, you want to ensure that the sales people are falling into this new regional zones as such, right? So you have to kind of apply those business conformance rules to kind of ensure that data is situated in the right spirit in the target system, right? So those are the things that you kind of work through. And now again, each of the business entities might be moving in a different way, in a different set of people being involved. Like for employee data, it might be HR working with different set of people. For customer master data, there can be more than one organization, but sales and marketing can play a role. And so that's all the work that kind of goes on in phase two.
All right, great. And some of the stuff you talk about for data quality, as you're actually implementing your data quality process or policy. And are you saying that some line of business users can get involved in that process, that they're actually cleansing or helping with that data quality as the data is being moved?
And so some of this process is iterative and can be done in an iterative fashion, right? Which is, again, you may not start with all the production data all at one instance, right? And so there will be there will be a life cycle of you trying to actually send some records over. And then there can be catalog on top of the MDM data, right, which is exposing information in a very business-friendly way, which businesses can actually vet the quality on and feed it back the issues that they have found. And then eventually, after a couple of iterations, you will go with the final iteration on the production data, right? So yes, definitely business can play a role, and depending on the tools that you have, it can make it more easy as well.
That's amazing.
And one thing I forgot to mention, there are certain other elements of implementation, which is the deduplication and quality rules as it comes to MDM, and these things are generally taken care by MDM systems themselves, the hub systems, rather than the application integration layer.
Okay, interesting. Ryan, did you have anything to add to that?
You know, as we look at how we're loading data into Master Data Hub, we also want to look at all of our different units of measurement or ways that we catalog or categorize items. So I know I use my NASA story a lot, but there was a time when NASA was sending up a Mars rover to go and look at different parts of Mars, and what has happened is they didn't have a data catalog of measuring units of measurements, and so what ended up happening is NASA lost about $125 million satellite and rover because they were using English metrics in one part of the division, and the other part of the organization was using metrics. And because they didn't have a unified and well-written and well documented way of measurements, they ended up losing that $125 million piece of equipment. And so as we look at acquiring new systems, you know, we will spend a lot of time in the data catalog and data assessment phase to make sure that we are aligning to a industry standard for that organization on units of measure, how we name companies, how we do different checkpoints of firmographics and demographics. The other piece is in that data analysis is there is a lot of time box to M&A work. And as we do this 30, 60, 90 days, there is a lot of penalties, especially when we're doing divestitures, of how we're going to take data out of the system. How do we find records that only need to go with this divestiture company? So a lot of that cataloging helps us to understand where data sits as we do that 30, 60, and 90-day program.
All right, really good point there. When you divest, you do need to actually identify what data belongs where. So you know you may need to actually clean some data out to be in compliance. So great points there. So we talked about the phase one, the phase two, the setup, and then the implementation. So in the implementation, that's a critical point. That's when you've identified the systems you want to integrate. Now you actually have to integrate. Then once you've integrated those systems, you now need to apply some data quality rules, business rules against the data you've collected. So you're starting to get towards that ultimate goal of getting that golden record. So once those golden records are identified, another key aspect is cataloging, so that you know what types of data you have. Now, we're making this all sound very easy, but there are lots of tools working in the background behind all this. Just a quick check: if you weren't using good tooling to help you get to this process, is it possible to do this manually? And if it is, why wouldn't you?
It would not be an enterprise standard way if we did it without a Boomi platform. And what we're looking at there is you're looking at we need a catalog and document every attribute in every table in our legacy system. We need to catalog and document every attribute in our master data management system. We then need to move integrations from all those legacy systems into our master data management system and do data quality cleansing. And then we need to get to a point where we can output it out when we get to the 60-day window of talking about analytics. So when you don't have a Boomi platform, you're talking about having spreadsheets on top of spreadsheets for looking at every table and every attribute and every definition. And we're having to do a lot of SQL writing and injections to try to move the data from point A to point B. And it might not be able to do delta detection. It might not be able to do conversions right. So it becomes more of a painful process when you don't have the ability to have an application where you can log in, see definitions, profile data, be able to quickly click and drag lines across a screen to do your mappings, and to have a matching engine where it can look and do all kinds of algorithms from Jarrow-Winkler to Levenstein on mathematical equations of how records need to match down together. It becomes a very difficult thing to do without a Boomi platform.
Okay, awesome. Or some sort of platform to be able to manage all of that in an automated fashion. And as you said, leverage algorithms. Okay, great. So the final step then, phase 3, would be when you want to bring this all together. So you're hitting like the last mile, you're coming to the end of your time box where you need to complete your M&A activity or your divestiture activity. So what are some key aspects here that are very important for phase 3 for that completion to get you across the finish line? Ayush, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. I mean, the phase 3 is the fun phase, I will say, where you've done all the hard work, things are almost there, and there will be iterative element, but now you're focusing on creating value out of that golden record, right? So you're looking into how you can actually upsell, cross sell, right? If it is a customer data model, and you're really using a myriad of again, catalog and prep kind of comes handy here because that allows business user and more line of users actually work on this data that has been kind of stitched together and ready to be consumed for improving kind of customer use cases, to do some churn analysis, and as I mentioned, probably running some marketing campaigns as well. And catalog allows you kind of to find out how to kind of look at your master data with all the metadata management and all those good capabilities, while prep allows lots of users to kind of work on that data and use upstream applications for visualization purposes and so forth, and really create the value out of data. The other tools that come in handy and are kind of low-code application platforms, which allow you to create really different view of applications on top of this metadata master data models to express it for different business entities. For example, support or staff may need to look at customer data in some form and fashion, while it may be very different for engineering purposes and so forth. So quickly iterating on and creating value on this through different set of tools that are handy for you is what you kind of work towards in phase 3. And phase 3 is basically a never-ending phase. Is way of life. Is basically all the focus is how you are creating kind of value on top of this master data.
All right, great. So essentially, this is where you've got your analytics layer created. You understand what data you have, and you're actually not only having to or being able to complete your merger, acquisition, or divestiture activity, but you're now setting up the business for a more data-driven approach to steward maybe line of business users. You mentioned there could be a support element. They're more technical, but could you also have, say, a business manager who needs to have some insight into some of that data you've just collected, to see about sales information as an example. Does this also help? Is self-service an aspect here as well?
Absolutely. It's, as we look at the industry right now, a lot of organizations are moving towards a self-service analytics layer, being able to create their own reports. And the goal and objective with that is making sure that everyone is using the attributes in the right way, that they're doing the mathematical equations of what sales revenue is. I know some of my past clients, we've had some situations where the marketing department ran a report and found that they were $2 million below for the year. And the sales department ran the same report in their own mathematical way and found that they were $2 million above. So getting to a point where we can document what is the right attributes for the right kinds of answers will allow for a more self-service analytic layer as we move forward.
Okay, awesome. So I know that we're doing okay for time now. We talked about the different phases. I'm just going to summarize some of the challenges as I heard them. So the challenges that you typically will face are ones with data quality, being able to identify that data, collect it, and combine it into a business-friendly way so that an average user can understand what those aspects are. Also, being able to realize and monetize the value of your asset, if it is in the case of a merger, quickly, and time is of the essence. So being able to accelerate these activities, create a unified view, create a solid and trusted data layer. So you're not introducing manual user prone errors, but also be able to understand the business value and enable a more data driven approach for post acquisition, post divestiture. Ryan, you brought up the fact that if you're doing a divestiture, you also need to understand what data to exclude. So cataloging properly is really important for that. Ayushi mentioned that the need to identify personally identifiable information and allowing the right access to the right people at the right time. So once all of that is complete, I think you're in good shape, but the tools that you need to get there, this is where the exciting part comes in, because you mentioned low code, Ayush, and that's where we could get more value out of the existing technical resources, because as we know, they're always stretched. So low code is that ability to drag and drop pre-coded elements to be able to allow less technical users, or maybe even technical users, to move faster into creating the process flows that they need and being able to give it that kind of self-service environment if that's required. So is anything to add to that before we move on to the actual solution?
I think you nailed it.
Okay, great. I'm listening. Okay, so this is the exciting bit. Not that, all that other information wasn't fascinating, but we want to let Ryan have an opportunity to show an example of how some tooling can help you. And this is the Boomi platform that he's a bit of an expert in. So Ryan, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have two slides just to try to talk through really quickly what we're doing here. So the first slide here is around just the Boomi platform in itself, and I'm hoping everybody can see this on the screen. Just make sure we confirm. There we go. So the first statement here is that everything we just talked about is laid out here on the screen in a very architectural way. So we're taking our data from our different legacy systems, and the first step, as we talked about, that 30 and 60 days is crawling through that data and doing two things for it. One is that we are cataloging each one of our tables and our attributes so that we can understand what could be part of our master data management system. What is the definition of a customer to us? We might have name and email and phone numbers, but we might find some unique things that are mastered customer information that's sitting in our legacy systems. And that is where the Boomi data catalog and prep is going to be able to catalog that for us. And then from that, we'd be able to create our models and do our match and merge process. The other part of that first 30 to 60 days is that we're doing the data profiling. So as it catalogs it, it is building out glossaries and it's building out definitions of this looks like a city, this looks like a state. These are different character sets of numbers versus varchars and min and max and nullness. And that data profiling will allow for us to find problems in our data. And we will then be able to take that and create in our Boomi integration layer as we go and read data and move it in the master data hub or move it downstream in our ERP systems, the ability to clean and enrich that data. We'll create those rules using Boomi Integrate or using third-party tools like Locate or Dun & Bradstreet to enrich and validate if an address is mailable, if an email is correct, if a phone number is correct. Those are things that those third-party tools will do. So natural processes, we crawl and understand our data, and then we take action through Boomi Integrate and into master data management for match and merge, building out any UI workflow in our flow screens, and then getting it out to our outbound ERPs and back to those legacy systems and back to our analytics layer, which then gives you that ability to catalog and understand what attribute is the right one for the reporting, as we just talked about it. To do all that, today we're talking a lot about that data catalog and prep. So I look at data catalog and prep in 4 different catalog categories, and this is what I'm going to show you guys on the screen. The first is the data governance. So being able to know who has the right to view data, who has the right to see specific pieces of an attribute and can put definitions in, but also having the ability to connect to it. And we're going to show you all the different ways that we can connect to data, how it crawls through that data and finds you the metadata. The third area that we look at is the data quality. So as it crawls through the data and does profiling, it's going to provide us the nullness, the mins, the max. It's also going to provide us what it thinks using AI to say it's city, it's state, it's a phone number field. So it starts looking at trying to categorize all your data for you before you even get into it. And the last is the data context. And that's basically going on and building those glossaries and those business terms so that each person can log in and understand more about their systems and be able to use kind of our Google search to come back with the result sets of, I need to look for a customer name. I need to look for attributes that have this kind of field populated in it. So I'm going to quickly keep spinning forward into our data catalog and prep environment. So this is our data catalog and prep. So the first thing that we look at is on the left side is our full navigation screen. In here, as we start a process, the first things we're going to want to do is we're going to look to how we're going to connect to our data. So this is where our adapters have many different systems that we continue to grow and expand in. We do have some universal connectors to connect to systems that are not listed out here, like JDBCs and different just API HTTP clients. But as you can see, we have a whole array of different systems that we can connect to. I know in my environment, I have Master Data Hub and I have Salesforce installed. And as we install that, it allows us to go into our different connectors, which we call our data sources and data stores. So I'm going to show you our data store. This is where we'll be able to quickly, using our wizard, push the plus button here. It's going to open up a whole entire store for us where we can say, what is the adapter? What is our domain name? And as I push next, it would give me the username and the password and the tokenization. And we can quickly connect to those systems using those wizards to connect to that, to Salesforce, to SAP, to MDH. And from that, as soon as I added this in here, the piece that we go into is our Explorer. And Explorer shows us all the different parts and pieces of what we have connected in our systems here. So if I pick my Salesforce AIM data and I go and explore it, and we go to that data set, and this is a really quick, and I'm showing you, if this was like a cell phone, I'm showing you how to text and call. We're not doing Angry Birds or anything like that. So there's a lot more in here today. But as we talk about just exploring our data sets, we can see down here, as I look at my data sources, my Salesforce AD that I created. And what it did was it automatically started crawling through those systems, identified all these tables for us. As I click into account, which is one of the more popular tables in Salesforce, it is going to show me what it has assessed on that Salesforce. So these are all my different columns that it found. It even found all my custom columns. And as you go across this, it starts telling you, hey, this looks like a city and this looks like a state. And we've determined that through AI determination that it is. So we're going to start cataloging it for you like that. And we can go into each one of these columns. So if I go click on columns here, we can go into each one of these columns and I can start saying, let's go look at state. And as I look at state down at the bottom here, we start seeing all of our nullness, our uniqueness. We start seeing what is holding the most data in it. So right now I have 3 records that are Massachusetts and everything else is kind of 1. The big part of this is that as I go over to my right, I can start looking at my values and start seeing things like Florida versus FL. These are things that we will go into our integration layer and start correcting it as we load the data. We need to start coming up with a standard for state. It needs to all be FL for Florida. When I see Florida spelled out versus Florida as a FL, we start seeing things like England. England is not a state in the United States. So we're going to need to address, like, what are we going to do with England going forward? So this is our way of starting to look at all of our different attributes and profiling results. I'm logged in as an admin, so I get to see everything. But as I go through here and I just go randomly pick a record ID, we can start saying in this case that this record is PII. And typically if it was a social security number or a credit card number, the system's already going to auto detect it and say that this is PII, and that it will start masking it until you tell it it's not PII. But as an admin, I can come in here and say, this is PII, and I can mark it as PII, and I can mask it all, or I can do a partial mask or partial show of those attributes. And so as a steward comes into this, they will not be able to see this record fully because I'm now marked it as PII, and I now have it as showing only the first 4 character sets. And so as we looked at that slide where of data cataloging, data profiling, connecting the systems, there are two other areas in here that we want to talk about. And one of that is the data security. The data security, as we come in here, is this access area. And so as I'm in as an admin right now, there are going to be a lot of other individuals logging in, and they might fit what we call out of the box data analyst or data catalog manager. And you can create your own as you go along. But as we go through here, we can start saying, can you see data? Can you view data? Can you update the data? So as we start talking about the glossary here in a minute, you can start seeing that we can change and adjust this and add people to each one of these different kinds of catalog or groups of security, or we can create our own security group and make all the different allow and revokes. So the last piece in this really quick 10-minute demo is when I was in my account Salesforce. So as I click in here and we were looking at all the different columns and profiling results, is that we have the ability to look at lineage. So we can look at connecting data or looking at data, how it's connected from, it came from SAP or Salesforce and it went to Master Data Hub. And this is that transformation logic. And then it went to a data warehouse. That's where the lineage comes into play. But the other important one that I like is data dictionary. Data dictionary, what it is doing is it is going through our different tables and starting to provide the technical definitions of what those attributes are. And then what we do from a governance side is we start saying, well, what else is important to us that we need to start cataloging each of these attributes on? And we can provide that as a column in here to say, my column might be, this is a DCP demo for who is the owner. And we can go through here and say, you know, back all the way over here, that the name field is owned by the marketing department and the type is owned by the sales department. And so we can start naming groups or individuals that are responsible for updating and managing each one of these attributes as we look at a more enterprise environment or centralized environment. The other part of this is that if I come in here and say Ryan Hartley 1 as a definition in here, and we actually save this and close out, that if I come into just my dashboard and say, I'm looking for Ryan Hartley 1, we get a whole entire Google result set that tells us all the different environments where Ryan Hartley is sitting in the name of the table, the attribute of the table, but it also goes in and looks at all of our data dictionaries. And this is now where I had that attribute. I can scroll all the way over to our new column called DCP Demo, who's the owner, and we can see that Ryan Hartley 1. So it does a really great job of indexing and allowing for users to log in here and say, I'm looking for customer data, I'm looking for certain types of data, in this case, Ryan Hartley 1, and bringing that to the page. So I will pause there and pass it back over to Anna for any other questions.
That was great, Ryan. Anything else you want to add to that, Ayush, that take that demo even further, or anything that you would like to state?
Oh, that's phenomenal. It's good to see kind of demo of things you're kind of working on the product and engineering side.
Yeah, it's funny. Ayush is a co-founder, but also co-wrote the Unify solution that became what we have here now. So I think it's kind of nice for you to see it in action. And also, I think I want to quote something that Ryan said earlier in one of our other sessions, that master data management is a way of life. And I remember thinking, wow, but it is very true, isn't it? Once this exercise is complete for merger, acquisition, or any sort of digital transformation project, that work isn't done. And the better you set up your systems to work dynamically, like what Ryan just showed us there, to constantly improve, the better and the more able your organization is to be data driven. So it's great to see, Ryan. And is that what you meant by MDM is a way of life?
MDM is the central hub to my whole entire life. So yes, absolutely.
All right, good. Well, we can see your passion for it. Kim, did you want to take it from here to see if we have any questions that need answered?
Yes, we got a couple really great questions from our audience. So the first one that we have here from the audience is, what are the top 3 must-haves when designing and implementing a golden record?
I would say my number 1 must-have is that you need a definition well written out about what is that domain. You can't go in and just start building a customer domain or supplier domain without really defining what it is. And that could be as simple as it's a unique name, a unique location, but getting that written and approved by your different units of the business is going to be the biggest must-have to start a successful MDM.
Excellent. So the next question we have is, how does data governance support the golden record?
Maybe I can take this. Like data governance basically enables the trustworthiness, and so you actually work with confidence on data when you have data governance in place, and it allows for collaboration again in a secure way. And from a company standpoint, you are very sure that you are compliant and you are not causing any trouble in a way as you are kind of marching through. So governance actually helps I mean, it just basically keeps you on track in a way.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because also one of our poll questions about what role did data governance play in your path to the golden record, 100% of our audience said that it was imperative and important to their success. So it's good to know that, the things that you guys are talking about and seeing out there as it relates to data governance and golden record development is also seen also by our audience today. Another question that I have is, who owns the data definitions, and how do we know what is the right definition for a data domain?
I'll start by saying the data definitions are owned by the business, and usually by the business owner of that legacy system. As we get to more of the central definition or a data warehouse or data lake, there is going to be a governance committee that would run an interview and come up with those in the first phase of work. And it is on the business units to come in and suggest changes or suggest adding attributes with definitions that would get reviewed and go through a workflow of approvals to add or update that data definition for going forward.
Oh, that's interesting. I actually, it just reminds me of a customer we've had, Ayush, who created a data marketplace. And one of the ways that they use the Boomi platform was that they wanted to not have to assign expensive licenses to get directly to a data system. I'm not going to name the company that they had to work with, and also what the kind of results that they would pull back from that would be so complex. They needed to support that end user and able to be able to see that information. So they used the Boomi platform combination of data catalog and prep and also flow to be able to see, get access to that end system, that data that they needed without having to access that system directly. So they were able to kind of show up whatever data they needed to see, and it also ensured that they didn't get access to what they shouldn't see. So I think that's kind of interesting.
And then these are the peripheral benefits of the MDM strategy, that once you get the data in a central place, you can fork it out using layers on top of it in terms of like APIs, automated APIs, API management, or like low code applications, right?
Yeah, and there's a question in here. I don't know if it's a question, it's more of a comment. So Ryan, great demo, super clear. That's what they're saying. So kudos to you. And there's another one here that says, how do I find a golden record when we only have customer information coming from a web app or mobile app? And the issue is we can't limit or force users to enter everything.
That's a good.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I can take it as well. I mean, it's just in alignment with a lot of the investments we are doing in product side within our context. So the search layer is one of the most important layer as you look into the future as well. That you have capabilities, you have NLP capabilities, and you can search the golden records. Not only search your metadata around the catalog of MDM solution. So in general, like you should look for the systems that are supporting that capabilities, where you have a search capability, and the world is moving towards more and more easy capabilities where you can allow the line of business users to kind of query the golden record in a very simple interface of search.
Okay, great answer. I hope that answered the question there. And also, just to clarify, NLP is natural language processing. So it's a way of being able to type a search question with real language, like real English, rather than having to put a very technical word or the technical column name as an example that comes in from all these different systems like SQL. The person who designed the SQL schema didn't necessarily think an end user might be trying to access it. So some of them can be a little obscure. Okay, any other questions, Kim?
That was it from our audience. Another polling result that I thought was rather interesting is the business value from the golden record. 33% of our audience said that the value that they're expected to receive is to support regulatory requirements. So as their regulations like GDPR, for example, come into place, building this golden record and having the right securities around that certainly empower and enable the adherence to certain regulatory requirements. And the other one that was quoted by 66% of our audience was improved decision-making functions, right? Which then ties back directly back to better data, better decisions. So that all makes a lot of sense and reinforces what you guys were sharing with us today.
Okay, good stuff. Any final call for questions before we close out this session? And while they're doing that, Kim, did you want to just let the listeners know how they could find more information if they would like, if they think of a question later?
Yes, if you have any other additional questions, feel free to go ahead and continue to put them within the chat window, or you can reach out to me directly at my email, which is Kim, K-I-M, .Kaluba, K-A-L-U-B-A, at Boomi, BOOMI.com, and I can distribute it to our panelists here for them to answer, and then send you back the answers to your questions.
All right, thank you, Kim, and thank you all for listening. I know your time is valuable. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ryan, for all of your insight and your great demo, and thank you, Ayush. Same, always very interesting to listen to you hear you talk about the solution. And thank you, Kim, for your time and your presence in running the polls today. Thanks all. Have a fantastic week. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.